So it is time for today's Breakfast Bites on Pure 24/7 Radio. I'm delighted to be joined by another member of the team from Torch Trust. It's Linda Prickett. Hi, Linda. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks. And it's great to have you on for today's Breakfast Bite. Great to be working with Torch Trust and bringing these little thoughts for the day. Just before we start, would you like to tell us what is it you do at Torch Trust?
So I'm head of finance and operations here. I've been here for about 2 years. You can probably tell I'm not from the UK. So my husband and I came in the autumn of 2022 when he became minister of a church in Oadby. I heard about the job at Torch Trust through an elder of the church, and I applied for the finance position. What I really liked about the Torch website, it was very clear that what their purpose was. They said they're here to make Christian resources accessible to blind and partially sighted people. So I like that.
Yeah, brilliant, and I love the work you do at Torch Trust. It is a wonderful how you, I mean I've spoke to Paul and he says like you produce something like in the region of thousands of books each month, and there's so much you do to help blind and partially sighted people to make their life a lot more enjoyable, a lot more accessible to various areas of life, which is wonderful. And I take it, do you enjoy the work you do at Torch Trust?
I do. I like the people and I like what we offer. So we have a good team, and I like the fact that we pray regularly together and are creative. So we are always developing new resources for our visually sighted clients, visually impaired clients, sorry. New audio, braille, large print books, new podcasts, online groups such as chat group or prayer group or book study. We actually have a new chaplaincy service as well. And then coinciding with the Easter season, we've just launched an initiative where we're offering free audio books to children. Now, it's a special audiobook because we've taken the Jesus Storybook Bible recorded by David Suchet. We've embedded it into a soft toy lamb. It's really cute because you press the nose to start it and you press the feet to do the volume. It's free for visually impaired children. Um, Now, adults can get audio Bibles too, but they're just not the lambs. So I like the fact that we can offer these at no cost.
That's brilliant. I mean, I've heard about that lamb, and I have seen a picture of it. It does look very cute, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, it's fantastic what you're doing at Torch Trust, and thank you for telling us a little bit about how you came to be there. I mean, clearly it's such a wonderful team.
Yeah. And what's one thing that has been really impactful for me is realizing just how grateful people are to have a Braille Bible. So last year we started producing the most recent version of the New International Bible in the updated English Braille code. And I was amazed that one of our blind trustees expressed a longing to own one, saying she'd never had a Braille Bible of her own.
Wow.
Now, naturally, she has access to audio, but to hold a Bible is a special thing. Now, because of the thickness of the Braille paper and the size of the embossed alphabet, it takes 43 to 45 volumes to contain the whole Bible. That makes a stack about 4 feet high. And if you put that on a shelf, it takes 4 feet of shelf space. Um, and it's also expensive. So, if not subsidized, that Braille Bible would cost about £540.
Wow.
But through donations, Torch makes it available for £1.50 per volume, or about 65 for the whole Bible. The joy that people feel when getting their hands on their own copy of the scriptures for the first time is hard to describe. But we hear it in their responses and we see it on their faces, and it's wonderful to help make that happen. So that's really impactful, seeing
Yeah,
that
brilliant.
joy.
Yeah, I can see it's obviously a huge impact not only on those who are being served, but those who are serving as well, which is just brilliant. Well, then, what have you got for us for today's breakfast bite?
Okay, well, let me start by saying that while I'm in this role of head of finance and operations, it's actually my third career. So my first career was parenting, and then after that, teaching. Um, so what's on my mind for a breakfast bite is to encourage the people whose current career doesn't really feel like one. I mentioned parenting as a career because the definition of a career is an occupation undertaken for a significant period of a person's life and with opportunities for progress. Now, the reason an occupation might not feel like a career is that the opportunity for progress appears to be missing. So, my main idea is to let God build your career. When it looks like there's no progress, remember that nothing is in vain in the Lord. And a season of ordinary diligence can surprisingly turn into something when you least expect it. And my sub idea is that every ordinary day can turn into a special day if God is invited into it. I've got several scriptures that convey these thoughts and several examples of how this has played out in my life. So,
Excellent. Well, yeah, I mean, I love what you say about it. I mean, a lot of us may not feel like we're in a career, but just because we don't necessarily have what's considered a career doesn't mean that we're not doing something valuable, doesn't mean that God doesn't have a plan for us. You know, we can
that's
fall into
right.
those sort of, I don't know, those traditional or just set ideas in culture about what a career should look like. But
Mm-hmm.
that's not necessarily what God has in store for us, is it?
That's right. So, so I'll just talk about parenting then. So when I committed myself to stay home with the kids, I found it difficult to set aside my personal ambition. I found I craved a sense of accomplishment and desired recognition for my work. And as a stay-at-home mom, that's kind of hard to come by. Uh, so when I came across 1 Corinthians 4, verse 5, saying that each man's praise comes to him from God, I hung on to that. It says, therefore, do not go on passing judgment before the time, but wait until the Lord comes, who will both bring to light the things hidden in the darkness and disclose the motives of men's hearts. And then each man's praise will come to him from God. Seems that God didn't want me to judge prematurely the value of what I was doing. And it was encouraging to know that I didn't need human praise because God saw what I was doing. And ultimately, my praise would come directly from him. Still, it was a constant challenge to focus on child rearing. One day I wrote a poem called Reflections on the Restless Moments of Motherhood. And it seemed like the words that flowed from the pen were just for me, myself. One verse said, then all the tasks that seem so small will grow into fine skills, while persevering in our work, good character instills. So not consciously, there was this idea that some of my skills would be valuable to other employment and that my character traits of perseverance and commitment would be valued as well. Now, to keep a long view of things, I remembered stories of two women who had committed themselves to their children and then seamlessly moved into other careers later in their life. One went into the job as a kindergarten teacher, even without a diploma, and the other ended up in a career in finance. And those two stories greatly encouraged me. Their efforts were not in vain and prepared them for other rewarding work in due time. So looking back now, I'm amazed that that's exactly what happened to me. When our youngest was 5, the church that we were attending started a school, and I was asked to teach French. I began to develop curriculum, and down the road, that curriculum writing led to being offered a job in a college to write a language course for business English. And while teaching that course, I brought in a speaker from a professional accounting body and was inspired to pursue an accounting designation, which led to a career in finance. So I worked both as a teacher and in finance following my stay-at-home parenting season. Now, that's the condensed version. I will add that I continued to write French curriculum on my own for 2 years after teaching at the Christian school. I had hopes of publishing it. One day, I drove to a post-secondary college, like a uni, in another city to meet the head of language department to get her feedback on what I had produced. And I was full of anticipation. But, she took one brief look and she said, it's a lot of work, isn't it? And that was that. So that curriculum never got published. But eventually, and I ended up just giving it away. But, it still wasn't wasted. It would seem like that was a colossal waste of time. But it was that 2 years worth of work that prepared me for the interview at the college. And because they needed somebody to write a course. And so they said, are you able to write curriculum? And without even hesitating, I said, yes, because that's what I've been doing for the last 2 years. And that job was a real gift. It was well paid. It was walking distance from home. It allowed me to fit nicely within the hours of my youngest son's school day, and it made up for every minute spent on that unpublished French curriculum. So truly nothing is in vain in the Lord. That's one example.
Excellent. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. Um, so I have another story when the kids were small. So this takes a little in a slightly different direction. But when the kids were small, I remember feeling like I was limited in my ability to reach out to others evangelistically. And since I was housebound with four at the time small children and no car at my disposal. So one day I tried praying in my closet, literally in my closet. Um, I was experimenting with an idea our pastor had put forth. He was praying to the, shouting to the mountains. Sort of this idea that we for hindrances to crumble and something like that. And I I was using the clothes in the closet to muffle my voice, trying to shout. It was absolutely ridiculous. It was very pitiful, but it was interesting that God could see what I was doing, and He didn't laugh. In fact, that day, two different people came to my door on their own initiative, and one of them, for the first and only time, they were neighbors. And I think it was no coincidence. God was showing me that, hey, even if you can't go out, I can bring people to you. And I just, and so He was not limited by my immobility, so to speak. And He heard my feeble prayer in the closet. The funny thing is, I was so surprised that I'm sure I didn't even think of how to be a blessing. And in fact, I think they were a blessing to me. I think I received some chocolate bars to thank the kids for something they had made. And I think I received a pie from the other lady. But anyway, um, so yeah, also an ordinary day turned out extraordinary just by, making that effort to bring God into it. Um, so uh, yeah, I guess God really does like to be invited into our day. It's like He knocks at the door, and if we open, He comes in to sup with us and we with Him. Um, now, as I was thinking up on this topic, I thought, well, what if your day turns the other way? Because sometimes days can turn bad. I mean, we really never know from one day to the next what's going to happen. Something bad can happen, or something sad can happen, right? Um, and so I want to address that as well. When my husband and I got married 40 years ago, we vowed to receive each day as a gift from God, just as in the Psalms that says, this is the day that the Lord has made. We will rejoice and be glad in it. So we have found it possible to rejoice even in the deepest grief because we know that God is in each day and each circumstance with us. When things go haywire, I ask God to direct my thoughts. I did this when my teenage daughter was rejecting the faith and flaunting her ungodly lifestyle. I do it when I'm overwhelmed with personal responsibilities. And I did it when my son was suffering from delusions. God wants us to acknowledge Him in all our ways. This verse never gets old, and it speaks again to inviting God into every day. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Linda. That is so true. God is in the everyday, isn't He?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's right. And that's why it's good to tap into God's faithful presence. I encourage you to ask God into your day in a recognizable way. Ask Him for uh, personal encouragement, or ask Him how you might encourage someone else. A phone call or an email or something. Either
Yeah.
way, I know He will respond. Ask Him to open your eyes to see it. Uh, if we have one more minute, I can share a quick recent example of that.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So last month while on holiday, I was reading Psalms and I was inspired to give myself to God anew, more fully, asking Him to let me use who I am and my abilities to reach others for Him. And one thing I like to do is write letters. So on the last day of vacation, my husband and I were contacted by a friend from high school, out of the blue. And that's from 42 years ago. It was a perfect chance to share in an email letter how we had grown in our understanding of the gospel. Then, just after he reached out to us, he crossed paths with someone who told him that we had tragically lost a son. And he mentioned this to us, and then it gave us another opportunity to share the comfort with which we were comforted in Christ. So it dawned on me that the opportunity arose just after I had invited God anew into my everyday life. Um, in fact, it also dawned on me that this opportunity here on 24/7 radio to share a breakfast bite might be a result of that prayer as well. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Linda. And it's been a pleasure to have you on today's Breakfast Bite this morning. Thank you so much for joining me. And thank you for bringing us this thought on how God is there in the everyday. In many cases, it's not that he's not there. Perhaps we need to actually give him the opportunity to enter into our lives. After all, he doesn't force his way in. Instead, he waits for us to allow him in, doesn't he?
He really does. And it's like, so nothing is in vain. Each man's praise will come to him from God. We can rejoice in each day. He knocks to be invited in, and in all our ways we should acknowledge him. And that's a big breakfast bite to chew. But imagine God just handing you a cuppa each morning and saying, "Let's do this day together, shall we?"
Yeah, I like that. It's so true. God is there, and He wants to be in every day. But sometimes, we can we can be a bit, I don't know, too stuck in our own ways or too focused on what's not important. God can help us guide through each day, which is brilliant. So thank you so much, Linda, for this
You're
breakfast
welcome.
bite. Plenty to think about. How nothing is in vain. God can redeem all these bad situations we go through, and how He's always there, even when situations are good, or even when they're bad. It is wonderful. So thank you so much, Linda. It's been a pleasure
You are
to
very
speak
welcome.
to you.
Okay. Have a good day.
You too.